Hello, and welcome to the 2025 Collective Network RFP information session. My name is John Page. I'm Director of Community Investments for the Seattle Office for Civil Rights. Thank you. The agenda for this information session, we're going to go over a land acknowledgement. We're going to do an RFP overview and timeline. We're going to talk about the background for this investment RFP, proposal requirements, how to submit your application, and how to ask questions. Land acknowledgement. This land acknowledgement was developed by Rita Gray, a member of the Turtle Mountain Chippewa, and it was updated April of 2025 this year. We would like to acknowledge that we're on the ancestral and traditional lands and waters of the Coast Salish and Duwamish people, including but not limited to the Muckleshoot Indian tribe, the Suquamish tribe, other federally recognized tribes from around the region, and all other Duwamish descendants. They are the original, present, and future stewards of these lands and waters. We raise our hands and honor them with gratitude. We also acknowledge the Treaty of Point Elliott and the Medicine Creek Treaty and understand the importance of these treaties as they preserve and protect the Duwamish people, their descendants, and their sacred homelands. Proprietary and confidential information. The State of Washington's Public Records Act, under Washington State Law, reference RCW Chapter 42.56, the Public Records Act, states that all materials received or created by the City of Seattle are considered public records. Public records are releasable unless legally exempt. These records include but are not limited to RFP, RFQ narrative responses, budget worksheets, board rosters, other RFP, RFQ materials, including written or electronic correspondence. In addition, the Seattle Office of Civil Rights RFP, RFQ application materials are released to rating committee members, and all rating committee members must sign and adhere to a confidentiality and conflict of interest statement. Personal identifiable information entered on these materials are subject to the Washington Public Records Act and may be subject to disclosure to a third-party requester. Examples of personal identifiable information include first name, last name, date of birth, social security number, financial account number, driver's license number, or other state identification number. The Seattle Office of Civil Rights does not require social security numbers on application materials or reports. Any personally identifiable information is redacted. For doing business with the city or the Seattle Office of Civil Rights, it is recommended to obtain a federal taxpayer identification number. I'm going to go over an overview of the request for proposal, the RFP itself. The Seattle Office of Civil Rights is seeking proposals from organizations and coalitions to build community-owned responses to domestic violence that supports alternatives to address the harm created by the criminal legal system. This RFP will be used to support community-owned programs and strategies centering the most systematically impacted survivors without involving the criminal legal system. We're talking about survivors, their families and loved ones, and those engaged in abusive or controlling behaviors long before crises arise. A total of $570,000 is available to award one or more agencies. So, I'll give you a background of this funding strategy. The origin of this funding comes from the work of community advocating for investments in alternatives to incarceration. Most recently known is the work organized by Ending the Prison Industrial Complex, EPIC, and the Budget for Justice, BFJ. In 2015, from community-based coalitions including Youth Undoing Institutional Racism, YURR, Ending the Prison Industrial Complex, EPIC, No New Youth Jail Campaign, the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond, PISAB, and European Descent. In 2018, advocates, including Budget for Justice, called on the city to realign its criminal legal system funding priorities. So we have a glossary of terms, and these terms are the definition of these terms are fully fleshed out in the RFP itself, in the body of the RFP. There's a couple I just want to name, and you can see the definitions of the rest of all of them in the actual request for proposal. So I'm going to start with the criminal legal system. All the formal institutions of the criminal legal system and immigration system. This includes police, immigration officers, courts, judges, prosecutors, jails, prisons, and detention centers. Our definition is built from an analysis of the prison industrial complex, which describes the overlapping interests of government and industry in the use of surveillance, policing, and imprisonment as solutions to economic, social, and political problems. The other one I want to define, I want to define community-owned. It refers to non-governmental groups who maintain responsibility and autonomy for decision-making, including budget authority, governance, project structure, program delivery, protection of data, and evaluation. And when we say survivor of domestic violence, a person whose agency and safety is compromised by a pattern of power and control. And a person being abusive, a person asserting a pattern of power and control. And the other one I want to define bystander intervention. It's an anti-carceral approach that emphasizes collective safety, de-escalation, non-punitive accountability, and community support to address harm without relying on state systems or violence. Outcomes. There are four main components of this RFP. So survivors report increased safety and support, trust-based community-centered services offered, alternatives to the police legal system documented and evaluated, bystander intervention and prevention training delivered. In the scope of work, applicants should provide applications that address building holistic community responses to domestic violence. Applications should address at least one of the following: community-owned DV response program, survivor-centered, includes the person causing harm, excludes the criminal legal system. A pilot program, think about design, implement, and evaluate a new model, includes skill building for bystander intervention training. And these trainings could be offered to community partners, to individuals, and definitely to staff. Priority and focus population. So priority populations are identified as a group or groups comprising a specific demographic, seniors, youth, families, etc., or having a specific issue in common, such as homelessness, mental health, violence involved, etc. So the priority population for this RFP will be individuals most impacted by the criminal legal system and youth and young adults. Focus population are identified as specific racial or ethnic groups within the priority population, and with the data showing the highest disparities of impact or harm in the area the investment is intending to address. And given the data provided, the focus population for this investment opportunity would be Black and Indigenous communities and other communities of color, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer communities, immigrant, and refugee communities. The applicant criteria. So applicants must follow non-discrimination and equal opportunity provisions mandated by federal, state, and city laws. To be incorporated and in good standing and meet all licensing requirements. If your organization is not incorporated, you can still apply with the fiscal sponsor that is incorporated. Applicants or the fiscal sponsor must have a federal tax ID number, EIN. Priority applicants. So priority applicants are led by survivors and practice in communities who have been systematically harmed by criminal legal responses to domestic violence, led by individuals impacted by the criminal legal system, a strong connection to the priority population, a strong connection to the focus population, a commitment to building power in the community and supporting healing. So a commitment to building power in the community and supporting healing, a commitment to address internalized oppression, and affirming all identities and values, ending all forms of oppression, sustain accountable relationships with individuals most impacted by criminal legal system responses to domestic violence, sustained accountable relationships with organizations, coalitions, supporting individuals most impacted and engaged in movement building, and sustained and continued commitment to work in collaboration with other organizations, coalitions led by the focus population. So the timeline for this RFP. So the RFP was posted last Thursday, October 9th. We're going to post this pre-recorded information session on October 14th. The deadline for having applications submitted is October 30th, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. The rating panel may conduct virtual interviews around the week of November 17th through November 21st. We plan to announce notifications December 2025, and we're planning for contracts to begin January of 2026. How we evaluate proposals. A rating committee will rate, review, and make award recommendations. References will be considered as part of the review process. If helpful, the CL Office of Civil Rights and Rating Committee may conduct interviews with final candidates. SOCR's Director, Derek Wheeler-Smith, will make final award decisions based on the committee's recommendations. And the rating criteria, and all this is outlined in the RFP. So the organization coalition overview, 15%. Race and social justice implications, 20%. The investment strategy, 25%. The scope of work will be 30%, and 10% will be on the budget. Final decisions and appeal process. CL Office of Civil Rights plans to announce awards by December of 2025. Applicants not selected will be notified, and to appeal an award decision, the applicant must contact me, John Page, at john.page, john.page, at seattle.gov, in writing stating the reason for the appeal. The CL Office of Civil Rights Director will review and provide a written statement, and the decision shall be final. There's a typo there. The CL Office of Civil Rights Director will review the appeal and will provide a written statement, and his decision will be final. How to apply. How to apply. Applications include the application cover sheet, responses to the application questions. It's a 5-page maximum. We ask you to try to stay within that 5-page limit. And a proposal timeline. Complete application packets are due 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on October 30, 2025. And they're to be emailed to John Page, the RFP project manager, at john.page@seattle.gov. And any applications that are incomplete or submitted after the deadline will not be considered. How to ask questions. To submit a question about this RFP, email the project manager, John Page, at john.page@seattle.gov with questions 2025 Collective Network RFP in the subject line. You need to have those questions in by October 23rd, 2025 by 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And responses will be posted on SOCR's website as questions are received. So it'll be sort of a frequently asked questions section on our website related to this RFP. We won't reply individually to the questions submitted. We'll just post the responses on our website. But please send them in. So if you have any information, any questions regarding this RFP, the contact is myself, John Page. I'm the RFP project manager. My email is john.page@seattle.gov. Telephone number is 206-817-9318. Thank you for being here.